Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, we take a look at America's opioid crisis that's leading to a rapid rise in the number of women being jailed across the country. Also, how a group of women in Kenya came up with a novel idea to protect themselves from gender-based violence. And is it really a female-led tech revolution here in Paris, as some are claiming? We'll be putting that question to industry insider Roxanne Varza. But we begin in the United States, where parts of the country are facing a tidal wave of opioid addiction. It's leading to skyrocketing rates of incarcerated women, tearing apart families while squeezing communities that lack both money and treatment programs, not to mention permanent solutions. This as women in America's jails are the fastest growing population, as Sanam Chantier reports.
With a bottle laying in my bed, there was a little.
These prisoners are battling addiction. They've been touched by the opioid crisis, which is putting more and more women behind bars across the US.
I started getting in with the wrong crowds and was getting introduced to more things. When I was introduced to opiates, that was it for me. I became addicted very quickly.
Crystal has tried to quit several times, but nothing has worked. She's been arrested for robbery, driving violations and other crimes, almost all related to drugs. And the struggles of her addiction have a wider impact. 10-year-old Robbie hasn't been hugged or touched by his mother since 2015. For him, this is as intimate as it gets.
She's been to jail multiple times, but how long was this one? 2 years.
Crystal's parents have been raising Robbie since he was 3. They still struggle to understand how the girl who sang in the church choir, played the piano and dabbled in cheerleading ended up this way.
When she went in jail, I actually felt relieved because I knew where she is at. You know, I knew I wasn't going to get that call at 1 o'clock in the morning saying that Crystal's died of a drug overdose.
Crystal's case is not uncommon in the US. A decade ago, there were rarely more than 10 women in this remote prison in the Campbell County. Now the population is around 60. Meanwhile, experts say prison isn't always the solution.
If we're putting people in jails and we're not offering them access to effective drug treatment in jails, we really have no business incarcerating them in that case.
With the opioid epidemic ravaging the states, lawmakers say some women and men are even being driven to prostitution.
And in a world first, Australia has launched an independent inquiry into workplace sexual harassment, hoping to find solutions to problems brought to light by the global Me Too movement. The 12-month investigation by the Australian Human Rights Commission, to be partly funded by the government, will seek personal submissions from the public. It's also going to consider the legal framework for dealing with the issue before making final recommendations. To Kenya now, where statistics reveal that 45% of women aged between 15 and 49 have been victims of physical or sexual assault. In Samburu, in the north of the country, some have escaped domestic violence by creating a village where almost no men are allowed. Still, it's not an easy life, as Emerald Maxwell reports.
In Samburu County, a little village in the heart of Kenya, in Maasai warrior territory. It's a community like any other, except that the only residents are women. Nepilele Gweni and 2 other women founded it some 20 years ago.
My husband often beat me violently and did nothing to look after the children. It's thanks to this village that my children and I managed to survive.
There are 10 villages like this one in the region. They offer women a chance to escape violent husbands, arranged marriages, or female genital mutilation.
Ideally, we would still have husbands, but at least now they don't bother us anymore.
For these women, making a living is the biggest challenge. None of them receive any help from charities or organisations. They make necklaces to sell to passing tourists, but more importantly, they've invested in a small herd of goats.
Our only way to earn a living now is to go to the market and sell our goats. We don't have men to look after us anymore. That's why the men hate us.
Some of the women go regularly to Archer's Post, the nearest small town. where they often have to brush up against male disapproval.
In our Samburu culture, it's not good for women to be without a husband. They become sort of prostitutes.
In this warrior tribe culture, women are most often confined to their homes and their roles as mothers. But these women are undeterred.
Are they healthy, these goats? How much do they weigh?
About 20 kilos.
Even if finding a man willing to buy from them can be difficult.
Previously, very few men could agree on that. But now, you see, they are starting to let things go because the world is rushing towards a different situation. You see, they also need to get women to feed them.
The only men allowed to live in Mupukori are the women's sons before they get married. The children's fathers are permitted to visit but cannot stay. Most of the children go to school in a neighbouring village, and at nightfall, the eldest boys go on guard duty.
We, the young men, because we're not yet married, we protect them against the wild animals here. So I think the men also now have the value in the village here with the community.
In Kenya, 45% of women aged between 15 and 49 have been victims of physical or sexual violence.
Now, one of the hottest places in Paris right now is neither a restaurant or a nightclub. It's Station F, the biggest startup incubator campus in the world. And many of us have heard about how President Emmanuel Macron wants to turn the French capital into Europe's Silicon Valley. Now, joining me in the studio today is rising tech star and the director of Station F, an Iranian-American, Roxanne Varza. Roxanne, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
You have a fascinating story. You were the co-founder of StartHer and Tech.eu, previously at TechCrunch France and Microsoft Ventures. But tell me, how did a literature graduate from California end up running a startup campus here in Paris?
Well, I moved from the US about 9 years ago and fell in love with the tech ecosystem in France. I felt there was a lot more to do here than actually what I had seen back in Silicon Valley, where everything existed already and it felt like there was less to build. And so I kind of just really dug in, and I met Xavier Niel, the founder of Station F, at a tech event. We stayed in touch, and once he started getting ready to build Station F, reached out to me and said, "What are your ideas?" And we took it from there. And it was actually a simple conversation.
I'm just amazed you said there that there was a lot more going on here than there was in California. I mean, that doesn't gel with our image of either location.
Well, at the time, there was a lot more to build, which means there was a lot more not going on here, but a lot more opportunity that existed. And today, I think when we compare the two ecosystems, what I've seen happen in France has been a dramatic change from what I remember when I first got here. So you can't even compare what's happening today with what it was 5 years ago.
Many claim, though, that women are starting to sort of lead this tech revolution here in Paris. In fact, I think Forbes magazine recently had an article stating as such. But you know, we've talked about this a lot on this show, that the reality is that women are in danger of being left behind in the digital revolution. So are we at all starting to catch up?
I think that we've seen a huge progression over the last few years. So when I moved to France and when I started StartHer, which was an organization to support and kind of make women more visible in the tech environment, there were very few conferences that we would see women speakers. There were very few startups that we could even name that were founded by women in France. Today, that's not the case. It has changed so radically that I could just list off numerous names of women in funds, women in corporates, women in founding startups. So I think that the situation has really changed. When we look at technical positions, however, tech teams, engineers, the numbers are still relatively low. But elsewhere in the ecosystem, I think we've done a really great job.
And as you say there, the stats are still pretty bleak in some areas. I mean, for instance, in 2017, just 33% of the digital sector here in France, the employees were women. And in 2016, 9% of startups were led by women, female coders just reaching 27%. So what needs to be done to bring those figures up to a situation where parity is at a priority, you know, where there is an equal playing field?
Well, I think a lot of what I have seen actually starts at a very young age. When I was working at Microsoft, we used to bring in young girls about 12, 13 years of age to discover kind of different opportunities in the tech ecosystem. And I remember a lot of them thought working in tech meant being sitting in front of a screen all day long, not interacting with people, and they just found that it was not something that really inspired them. And so I think, you know, that's unfortunate that that is the image that we're showing people, when actually it's a very creative industry. We're building very impressive and powerful tools. We're obviously interacting with people. So I think, you know, there's a disconnect that we really need to change.
What are the dangers, however, if that doesn't happen?
So I think we're going to obviously lose out. People always say, why do we need women at the end of the day? Is it just to say we're diverse and that's the end of it? And actually, no. I think women are also, we have to remember that they're part of the consumer market. So a lot of these tools that we're building actually are for women as well. Women are also a great, human resource in an organization. So to actually say, hey, we don't want to look at 50% of the population, that's really quite silly. And then I also just think that if you put people of the same background together to solve the same problem in the same way, that's not innovation. So if we really want to build something that's innovative, we need different people from different backgrounds.
But there is a problem here in France, isn't there, in terms of equality? I mean, when you compare feminism here in this country compared to, say, the US or the UK or Canada, it has somewhat lagged behind, hasn't it?
In some respects, yes, and in some respects, no. So I think we've actually seen the Me Too movement, which touched a number of different industries, also impacted the tech industry. We had a couple of US prominent investors and prominent entrepreneurs that were kind of called out for their poor behavior. And those kinds of things actually didn't really happen to the same degree in France. So I think, yeah, we can say that feminism is treated differently in two countries, but we can also say that the abusive behavior also isn't quite at the same level either.
Roxanne, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it for now. You can connect with us via our Facebook page, that's France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far. And please, yes, keep those comments and story ideas rolling in. So until our next show, bye for now.